And welcome back to our continuing coverage of what's happening in Baltimore in the aftermath of a hung jury, which means the judge in this first officer, William Porter, who was being charged in the death of Freddie Gray, it has now been declared a mistrial. Only thing that can happen now is prosecution can refile this case and retry this case, but it'll be some time before we know what their intentions are. But the reaction in the city of Baltimore, as you can imagine, not a lot of people very happy. There are some protesters that are making that very clear. They are out, they are very vocal. But this time around, unlike with the death of Freddie Gray, when we saw protesters throwing rocks and what then turned into looting and rioting, there is a very strong presence of the police on all areas of this, not just in the hot spots, but they are in City Hall. They are surrounding the courthouse. In fact, let's get to Kevin Lewis now. He is at City Hall, and, you know, we're coming up now on almost 5 o'clock when most people will be getting out of work, and that's when I would expect, and that's when the police would expect the crowds will continue to grow.
Absolutely, Jonathan. The roads have definitely picked up travel-wise out here. You had mentioned the police versus the protesters. By sheer eyesight, it looks as if there are more sheriff's deputies and Baltimore City police officers on the ground here than there are protesters, which, of course, is a good thing when it comes to keeping the calm and making these protests peaceful and friendly, as opposed to what we saw back in April. We have been reporting to you live since just before 4 o'clock, and we've seen a lot of people expressing their opinions and disapproval with the mistrial vocally. I want to introduce you to Michael D'Antuono. You are from New York City, and you are an artist. What brought you to the city of Baltimore?
Well, seeing so many cops getting away with murder, literally, and here in Baltimore, it's a special case. And I did this painting called "It Stops with Cops," and the point is, they say that there are many good cops, but good cops don't let bad cops kill defenseless citizens. So I'm trying to get those good cops out there to step forward and confront that blue wall of silence. If a good cop had said something and known something about this particular case, perhaps we'd have a verdict today, possibly a guilty verdict.
Michael, we talked earlier today when the jury was still deliberating. You had said you felt it was a good sign that they were taking hours upon hours, really hashing out all of the evidence and talking about everything that took place in the courtroom. When you heard the word mistrial, what was the first thought in your mind?
That people are going to be upset. They did not, justice wasn't yet served. Until somebody takes responsibility and somebody pays for the death of Freddie Gray, there'll be no confidence in the system.
What would you say to the other side of this matter that says Freddie Gray had an arrest record? He was notorious on the street for engaging in illegal activity, and he had faked injury before. To that person that sides with the police, what do you say?
Well, you have to be objective, of course. But Freddie Gray's arrest record, his conviction record, was almost nil. And he was a very low-level criminal, if you want to call him that. There were much bigger fish to fry, I'm sure. And that's kind of it doesn't make any difference. The man died in police custody, or after being in police custody. And that's really the only thing that matters at this point.
You were just in Chicago with the racial undertones with the police department there currently taking place. Yeah. How does the city of Baltimore compare? And for the record, you weren't here in April.
No.
But from what you've seen on the streets during the trial, how does this compare to what's taking place in Chicago?
At this time, it's mild in Baltimore compared to Chicago. Chicago, the streets were full, and it's starting to dwindle, unfortunately. And they want the mayor, you know, they want him gone. And that would sure go a long way towards helping relations.
Will you be back for trials 2 through 6 if they end up going to a trial?
I just might do that until we make things right. Yes.
All right, Michael, thank you very much for joining us on the air here. This is just one of the protesters who's been outside of the courthouse throughout the entire Porter trial. Michael says he's shelled out $10,000 in his own funds to create these posters. He also had a billboard on a truck that he was driving around Baltimore to try and get the message across as to what he and many others on the streets here in Baltimore say is a lack of justice. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Kevin, we appreciate that. Thanks very much for that.